energy that is coming after Aries in this natural evolutionary cycle, okay? Taurus manifests itself naturally after Aries. Aries is a very yang sign, and so we are seeing the expression of energy moving away from the center, okay? So wherever you have Mars in your astrology chart, wherever you have like Aries and in the first house, this is where your soul is expressing itself and allowing its direction to be present as it unfolds. Whereas when you look at Taurus as an energy pattern, in evolutionary astrology, it understands it as firstly a subjective experience, okay? Because it's before Virgo, so we're looking at this very subjective experience, okay? And so we're looking at, and secondly, it's newly developed. It's a newly developed archetype. So we are looking at the relationship of energy coming back to the center. So yin, and it comes back to the center, okay? And we are also looking at Taurus as the underlying reality, the underlying archetypal structure of survival, okay? Of survival. Fundamentally, it's the archetype of survival. Now, we tend to think of astrology as something that only exists in the human point of view and our personality and perspective. And that's very limiting, okay? And it doesn't allow us to open up to that these archetypal structures, that is Pisces, that is Capricorn and such, are not exclusive to human experience, but are the actual fabric of this existence, okay? An example that I always use in the schools that I teach, Capricorn is an archetypal structure that creates a sense of boundary. It's your skin, okay? And it is the bark on the tree. It is the protective part of the crab's shell. And when you see it from that perspective, you can immediately start and begin to understand that when you read Capricorn in your chart, you're looking at the natural externalized like boundary or skin or outer shell, exoskeleton, that you as a person creates as you learn to find inner security, okay? This is like the deeper meaning behind these archetypal structures. When we break away the construction of human personality and we integrate more of nature into the astrology charts and into our consciousness and allow that awareness to be present with us, we begin to see our infinite connection into the universe, the infinite connection to these archetypes, and that we are manifestations of them, okay? So when we look at Taurus, for instance, we're looking at the archetype of survival as a species, as the structure that allows a tree to absorb water from the ground, to understand its very, very intricate process of transforming light that it absorbs from the sun through its leaves. It captures the leaves. It's even the structure in which a leaf has been beautifully designed and has evolved itself into being very wide open. Now, when you look at a satellite dish, for instance, or any form of solar paneling, you'll notice that the structure in which we think and engineer something like that, we use expanded expression. Why? Because we're absorbing something. So the greater the width that we are able to access or expand upon, the more we can receive. And so that is a fundamental archetype that is rooted in the nature of Taurus energy. Okay, so what are our essential needs? What are our resources? How do we construct something? How do we develop? How do we evolve in relationship to what our environment provides us? Like a polar bear, for instance, its whole entire structure is formed based on what its environment influences it to be. Imagine if you had stuck a polar bear in the middle of the Sahara Desert or the Nevada Desert, for instance, right? it wouldn't actually have a very fun time. And you, as a human being, can go and actually experiment with this if you feel like doing it, where you could actually just put like tons of, clothes on and then go to these warm climates and just kind of roam around for a little bit, um, experiencing yourself in this way. You'll notice that it just doesn't work. You'll boil. So you take off your clothes and you adapt to your environment. And so you begin to see through expanded awareness that this energy that is contained not only in the 12 archetypes, but in particular, this Taurus energy, you can start to see that the nature of our survival through the entire species, but in human form, is rooted in our essential needs, our most fundamental and basic primal requirements. And every single one of you that sits here today, including the most powerful people in the world, still need to go to the toilet, still need to eat food, still need a decent amount of sleep in order for their biology to maintain a certain level of functionality. Okay, so it's fascinating to ponder when you really, really get in touch with archetypes and you see the magnitude and the beautiful complexity that is involved, and that when we just look at our personality, we're narrowing the scope of what we're potentially able to understand. Okay, so saying that, what does that have to do with the moon in Taurus? Well, for one, when we understand the dynamics of Taurus in itself, okay, and the moon in its position with the sun in opposition, okay, what we have here is the halfway point or the midpoint of this lunar cycle that has taken place for us. And remember, the lunar cycle begins with the sun and the moon in a conjunction, okay, right, connecting with each other. Now, I highly recommend looking up and getting connected with the universe that is Dane Rudar, okay? For any of you that are really interested in looking at the phasal relationships and the phasal experiences that astrology does provide us with, in terms of the understanding of how these energies work and how the cycles are manifesting themselves, Dan Rudar has got some really great material. And I can't remember off the top of my head the book that specifically talks about that phasal relationship material, because he's got a couple. I will find that during the intermission and post it in the chat for you so that you can go and have a look to that. And I will also post it in the description and links once this has been processed. Okay, so we have the moon and the sun making a connection on the new moon, and this initiates the seeds of growth. Okay, so the awareness of the Scorpio energy has now being birthed, and that's what's really important to understand, is that any full moon is always related to the new moon. So we go to the new moon, and we see that this is a Scorpio lesson, really. Okay, we focus a lot on the Taurus energy, but it's a Scorpio lesson fundamentally still. So to get in touch with the energy, to get in touch with this full moon and experience, it is about understanding what Scorpio is actually trying to tell us in relationship to the other parts of the astrology chart, which I'll talk about. So I spoke about the new moon being about metamorphosis and transmutation. And I feel that the tone has been set for this new reality, okay, to be available to us. The tone has been set, the direction has been set, the metamorphosis, the mutation, this has really, really reached this point in this new moon in Scorpio, where the depths of our psyche is being brought to the surface, the understanding the soul desires, the empowerment and disempowerment that we as a collective and individuals face on a daily basis This is all being brought to the surface with this new and full moon configuration and cycle. And when we're dealing with the polarity of Scorpio and Taurus, okay, when we're dealing with the polarity of Scorpio and Taurus, now why I talk about polarities is that if you are to understand a sign for that matter, it is very, very important to understand its polarity, okay? 180 degrees of the sign. So in this case, we're talking about Scorpio as the new moon, as the original kind of seeds of awareness that was being created when this new moon took place. So we're talking about Scorpio. But now that we've reached this full moon experience, the moon naturally lands in Taurus, and now we have the integration. Okay, that is the key word here, integration. It's balancing point, it's counterpart, it's shadow, it's just, yeah, integration would be the great way to describe this. So when we're talking about integration, what we are fundamentally saying here is that we need things to balance, and it is found in the Scorpio archetype, the Taurus archetype. So when we're dealing with Scorpio themes like betrayal, when we're working with Scorpio themes like abandonment and loss, when we are dealing with Scorpio experiences and the unconscious fears that arise to the surface from past life dynamics that are deeply rooted within the emotional body, okay? When we look at the Scorpio archetypes that is about confronting our emotional reality and not having a filter that is rooted in illusion or rooted in disassociation or rooted in the need for denial, okay? This experience of Scorpio energy, okay, gets balanced when we see Taurus. Okay, so Taurus here in the Scorpio energy is rooting for our awareness to be developed around self-reliance. Okay, self-reliance, self-sustainability. Okay, this has also got to do with the deepening of your capacity to feel secure and safe within yourself. Okay, your ability to sustain and develop deep like foundations that when experiences in life move through you, your ability to respond to them comes from a more grounded, stable, secure, and balanced place within inside of yourself. And we get tested on this experience quite often, more than we think. Now, the cliche and the classic example that I always give when I talk about the Scorpio Taurus polarity is we're dealing with this axis between having experiences show up in our lives where we feel incredibly overpowered by, and then us responding to it with the classic word, how am I going to survive? I mean, this is not a coincidence when this stuff happens. Imagine, and for every single person that is here today, to a certain degree, you have had a relationship that has ended. And the relationship has ended through a betrayal, maybe through abandonment, maybe through two different directions emerging, and so therefore the loss of the experience. People still stayed friends, but at some point there was an emotional separation. And the cliche is that if you ever watch a film that's deeply rooted in the theme of love, at some point there's a separation between two love people, and one of them is eating ice cream to comfort themselves, and their life has gone to, to the dustbin. It's just like, what am I going to do with my life? I can't live without this person. It's, how am I going to... This is the classic sort of Scorpio experience when we do go through this separation of emotion. The Taurus archetype always kicks in and says, well, now you've got to pay attention to how you have been self-reliant and how your relationship to your self-sustainability is now being brought to the surface. So inherently in Scorpio, Taurus is being taught, we are learning Taurus lessons, that it is about self-empowerment, Scorpio, that gets developed through our ability to understand our own essential needs, Taurus, and what is essential for our survival, Taurus, and what are our fundamental basic experiences that keep us grounded and keep us very much rooted in just taking things one step at a time. Okay? That's a big lesson, I feel, that is brought to the surface for most of us on the planet at this point in time, for at least 80% of the people. You know, for a lot of you that have got any planets in the second house of the astrological chart, if you have the moon in Taurus, if you've got the sun in Taurus, you know, even Pluto in the second house of the astrological chart, rising sun in Taurus, you are learning in this lifetime to understand what does it mean to be self-reliant? What does it mean to understand your own value system? Like, what are the essential values that you have within inside of yourself that provide you with the context of who am I? Okay, I mean, this is a big part of the story. Who am I? When you understand your Taurus experiences. Now, if we had to flip it the other way around and we had to look at the Taurus energy from the perspective of Scorpio being the integration point within Taurus, then what we're dealing with here is our relationship to sharing. Okay? Sharing. And in particular, our relationship to how we see other people's Tauruses. Remember that every single person that is in our outer world, we are interfacing with their Taurus, and they are interfacing with our Taurus, and then the configuration between the two is the Scorpio lens. Does everybody get that, what I'm trying to say here, right? So my values are interfacing with another person's values, but from my point of view, my values are my own Taurus, and then it's other people's values, Scorpio, other people's needs, Scorpio, other people's shared resources, Scorpio. And then of course that flip-flops the other way around, right? So we're learning through the lens of Scorpio, what does it mean to invest our resources in another person's emotional reality? And that's where the lesson here comes with the Scorpio experience of attachment, okay? The unconscious attachment and emotional security placed in another person, or an externalized thing like a government, or a presidential candidate, or a new car, or recording equipment, or mobile telephone, or job, or house, okay? We need to emotionally connect with something in order to experience it. As we experience it, we are externalizing the experience or our emotional security. That emotional security, at some point, due to the law of impermanence, becomes the very reason as to why we feel threatened on a deep security and emotional level, when the dynamics that create the foundation for our emotional security that we placed in becomes shaky. So in a very simple way, Scorpio is teaching you how, through external attachments, to become emotional self-reliant when those attachments through natural law and law of impermanence end. Okay? So you can see here that if we begin to look at the more larger overarching planetary elements, that is the Pluto through Capricorn, Jupiter in Libra, and Uranus in Aries, okay? So we have Uranus and Aries over here playing out this fantastic role in each of your psyches of, come on, let's go. I want my freedom. I want my ability to express myself. I feel this instinctual need to just have this new direction. I feel alive. Who am I? All of this type of magical sort of expression of Uranian energy to just be me. The Jupiter in Libra is playing out now in terms of how do you and other people interface in a small little bubble called Earth in a way where you're not just, where you're beginning to understand what type of egos are right for you and what type of egos are not right for you, okay? How do you, when you break down an ego structure, what are the fundamental sort of components that you or me will naturally understand or resonate with or associate with or recognize. Okay, what are the fundamental components in an ego structure that basically give us this ability to say, this is what I like and this is what I don't like? It's a very complicated answer, but yet it's actually pretty simple at the same time. The complexity of the situation comes from the deeper analysis of what belief systems you hold and how those belief systems have been manifested. But fundamentally, it's a belief system or a core philosophy. That's one. The other component, can we guess it? Full moon? Full moon in Taurus? Yes, our needs, our individual needs, our individual idea of what are our essential requirements for our life, okay? So here's a path that your soul has chosen to awaken within itself. It requires a certain essential needs framework. And I love to watch this interaction take place and see how energy, because when you transcend the human personality and you just understand the dynamics of energy interacting with each other, it's actually kind of fascinating, because it's the universe just interacting with different forms of energies and adjusting itself in accordance with natural law, right? It gets all complicated when we begin to sort of like attach our more mental structure to the process. But essentially, if I come into this lifetime and my Venus, as an example, is in Taurus, or let's just say Gemini, okay? And then you have another soul that has Venus in Scorpio. Okay, so why Venus? Venus is essential needs energy. It's talking about the relationship that you have to yourself, right? Your essential needs. So you have person A who has Venus in Gemini, and you have person B with Venus in Scorpio. And here's this philosophical debate about the perspective of, let's talk about like global warming, okay? Let's talk about this idea of global warming. Here's person A with Venus in Gemini, and person B with Venus in Scorpio. How do you think this interaction is going to take place when you have the subject, core philosophy, like this idea, climate change, and everybody gives their own opinions? Gemini, okay, this is the axis or the polarity of, never mind, it's too complicated, Sag, right? So each person has their own core philosophy. Now, the fundamental basis for each person's core philosophy is going to come from their essential needs relative to what their soul requires them to be attentive to. So for somebody that has Venus in Gemini, the tendency to look at global warming is going to come through these value systems of, we need to gather data, Gemini. We need to have a lot of information from different people's perspectives that allows us to, Gemini, understand the relativity of it. Like, maybe there's some discoveries that are happening over here in this part of the world that is being brought to the surface. And what happens if we listen to the people from Japan? And what about the people from Antarctica? We've really got to be open to the opinions of other people, Venus and Gemini. Why? Because the soul is learning about the diversity of opinions. And it's really important to understand the language that is associated with these energies. And then you have a person that's got Venus in Scorpio, and their interaction is going to be more along the lines of like, this is a very serious topic, and I feel that it's really important for us to get to the core. And what are the agendas? Where is the money trail going? Who are the people that are in charge? What is the power that is influencing your opinions? Can you see the difference in how these people are interacting? Now, when you have two people that are interacting like that, and they come to this disagreement aspect, okay, oh, but mine is my approach is better than yours, and yours approach is better than my approach is better than yours, and the other person says, well, mine is better than yours. This is where you get this kind of conflict that is the Sagittarius part, right? It's so much about not trying to understand the convincing and converting part, but understanding each other's individuality, okay? And this is what I was trying to get to with this current T-square that took place and is at the moment taking place, with Jupiter in Libra squaring Pluto in Capricorn and Uranus in Aries squaring Pluto and opposing this this Jupiter in Libra. And it is about this dynamics within ourselves where, and I mean, I've watched how this has played out through social media, through group dynamics, where you've got groups that have got the same fundamental, outlook towards a certain idea, and then all of a sudden you see these energies, manifesting themselves through the astrology, and everybody's turning in on each other. It's like we're all in the same core value of this, but because my opinion and your opinion have got diversity to it, now all of a sudden we're enemies. And that's what's the key ingredient with this energy pattern right now, is that it's not about looking at another person's values and opinions and perspective and judging it as if ours or mine is better, but holding awareness and space to understand what it is and where are they coming from. And even going further than that and investigating the undertone of why they would even come to those conclusions themselves and what is creating that. And that's where the network of our multidimensionality becomes awakened. Because by just looking at this interaction between person A and person B with Venuses in different placements, you're already going to have a conflict manifest on itself if the egos are saying, my ego is, or my information is better than yours, or my approach is better than yours, right? They're fundamentally different vibrations that are going to find friction if we see it as separate. And this is the point. The point is that the separation that exists within the psyche because of the imbalanced left and right brain hemispheres is bringing to us this deep psychological mess. Okay? And the fascinating thing for me is that we are exactly where we are as a human race. And for us to think and feel that we need to be in some golden age, or that we need to be in some like higher state of awareness that is, all good, etc. To me, that from my perspective, from my point of view, to me, that is setting us up for a very, very difficult period of time going ahead, because it allows us to not see and honor the fundamental core darkness that is present with us right now. And that is that our individuality, our knowledge of who we are as a human race, of what we are, is at a point where it clearly illustrates that we don't know who we are. We don't know why we come here. Deeply so. We can have our theories and our emotional experiences, and there are people out there that can validate for themselves that they've had those mystical experiences, that accesses higher states of consciousness and sees it, and that's amazing, and I accept that, and that's part of their journey, and that's part of my journey to experience that through their perception of expression. But the point here is that what we are wanting to look at more, what we are wanting to understand about more, is us, is who we are. Because when we look at ourselves, when we look at the deepest aspects of who we are, and we understand the dynamics and we begin to explore this process, which is going to take for a very, very long time. So it's not just like, tomorrow there's the change that's going to take place. It's an ongoing experience. But when we look at these more complicated, deeply intriguing realities that are present for us, not only within our own personal lives, but as a collective, it's really, really grounding, Taurus, to orientate your sense of gravity and awareness and hold space within yourself to say, what are we learning from this experience? What are we understanding about ourselves from this experience? And again, it always brings the awareness back to yourself. It always brings the awareness back to the origin of manifestation, which is this, okay? I think that the cardinal cross experience or T-square that is taking place with Capricorn, Aries, and Libra, with Jupiter in Libra, Pluto in Capricorn, Uranus in Aries, and this full moon was bringing to the surface this deep underlying need for change. But in fact, no, not need for change. That's not the word. The underlying reality that change, cardinal energy initiates change. This energy of change is driving us to look at the way that we see ourselves. And it is promoting an entirely new direction for us. And that direction is not something that I feel that we need to try and understand. Because the moment that we do begin to try and understand it, from my point of view, I feel we already condition what it is. So it is about grounding yourself back into into a very deep observing state and watching the unfoldment process take place. And as this unfolding process takes place, we reveal more about ourselves. And as we reveal more about ourselves, we become deeply connected to a more profound sense of wisdom and self-awareness that ultimately I feel becomes a place that we can begin to heal ourselves from, using a part of us, or using this awareness, using this relationship to seeing our behavior, seeing why we respond the way that we do, like monitoring that inner space and understanding it. And then through awareness that arises from that experience, allow us to deepen the connection towards a place that I feel has been not honored for a very, 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 very long time. And that's okay. Like we have chosen to evolve ourselves in this direction because of outside circumstances, because of what was our essential needs, and so on and so forth. So there's an immense amount of complexity that has brought us to this place. And it's not something that I feel that we need to get too involved into, but just to honor the place that we're right now, and to get in touch with that on a deeper place, a more emotional place, a more awakened state. And it's about less talk and more observation, more awareness, more attention. Okay? And as we allow for that kind of like stillness to be more present with us, we can actually begin, like I said, and this is regurgitating it, we can begin to understand what are we doing? What are we experiencing? What are we going through? Now, for me, this full moon in Scorpio, this full moon in Taurus experience really just brought around a more smaller cycle of initiation of change. We have Venus currently in Capricorn at this stage, and it's moving up to Pluto. We have Mars in Aquarius, okay? And the phasal relationship, okay, so again, I spoke about this. The phasal relationship between Venus and Mars currently in the natural zodiac is within 30 degrees of each other, okay? Venus travels faster around the zodiac than Mars does. And so Venus is approaching Mars. And so because of that approaching element and 30 degrees of Mars, we're dealing with a balsamic phase relationship, a completion cycle. So this relationship cycle between Mars and Venus is where we're going to experience for the next couple of weeks, a deep inner purging of old ideals, value systems, ego identities, emotional realities, emotional attachments, relationship to certain things, belief systems, etc. All of this is going to really, really, really just be revealed to us in one big, massive wave. And on an emotional level, that as that comes through to us, you're going to actually begin to see with open eyes, with real eyes, through stillness, through observing. You're going to begin to see that your whole entire value system and energetic relationship to these things is going to change. And there might be small things like just seeing something in a different way or choosing to do something differently. But this experience over the next couple of weeks is going to really, really reshape what you value, what you think your essential needs are. What is your belief system that you use to validate yourself, validate your world, validate what you think is important, etc. So that will then echo this more deeper astrological alignment that is taking place with Venus, pardon me, not with Venus, but with Pluto in Capricorn, Uranus in Aries, and Jupiter in Libra. As Jupiter's story in Libra is about reshaping identity, reshaping ego structure. Again, your philosophy and how you interact with certain people will change. It's there. It's that part, that like aspect of this period of time right now that is highlighted for us in a very, very profound way. And energetically, it's just going to move through us like this. You see, the deeper experience here with this full moon is that essentially every single one of us is looking for your way back home, looking to seek wholeness, looking to know the origins of your birth, your origins. And what happens is that when you get born into the world, you immediately have the umbilical cord cut. You immediately have the relationship to your life start in a way where your psychology is instinctually wanting to return back to the mother. And this is fundamentally rooted in the psychology of leaving your house, coming back to your house, eating food in your house, allowing yourself to be nourished in your home, to energetically rest, to feel safe. These are all the dynamics that are rooted within our unconscious patterns of behavior that we don't really pay attention to as much as we should, or at least honor as much as we should, when it means walking the path or understanding your path. Because that is the point here. The point is that as you awaken the self-awareness, as you awaken to the realization of what it is that you are, and I'm not talking about some new age, multidimensional kind of experience where you are the universe, because I'll cut straight to the point over here. When you are in an experience that does not make you feel safe, when you are in an experience where you are deeply confused, when you are in an experience that is challenging the most vulnerable aspect of your emotional reality, 90% of the time, your relationship to that experience will be wanting to look for love. Okay? The only reason why I say that little 10% not is because we still have within our psyches this need for self-sabotage. We don't deserve love. This is a kind of like Venus and Virgo Pisces stuff here that we can talk about a bit later through religious conditioning. But 90% of the time, we're going to search for love. And from 2012 up until right now, most of us at some point has felt incredibly safe and secure when returning to an awareness where you said, all is one, all is part of the universal creator, and that I am, even to the extreme where it's like I am from some star system and I want to return home. I don't like this planet. From my point of view, this is our relationship to not being able to process the emotional reality and being incredibly overwhelmed and struggling to integrate and attach physicalness, the physical world of the 3D plane, and its experience of disempowerment and emotional reality of not feeling empowered, and the ego not feeling like it can survive, and then transcending that and accessing higher states of existence and staying in there while having a complete and utter like inability to experience emotional growth on a level through your Saturn. So the tree that I branched off right now was talking more about that each of us is returning and wanting to get back to that place which was the mother's womb, each of us. Through our physical senses, Taurus, we develop a relationship towards our external reality that gives us that sense of safety and security, okay? So as you grow up, you have a blankie, as an example. You have the dummy, you have, or the pacifier, you have your teddy bear. And then as you get a little bit older, you kind of have your favorite toy, or you have your friend, or some attachment to something that deeply gives you that feeling. And then as you get older, you reminisce on the past experiences of great experiences, like you maybe have a childhood, especially for Cancer archetypal structures. You have a connection towards your favorite cooking, your favorite food. You take a hot shower, and that brings you an emotional state of calmness. And what's interesting about this experience is that we all have, to a certain degree within our psyches, something that we like to recreate within ourselves that allows us to feel this warmth, this connection, this reminder. It's a very difficult place to be when you allow yourself to let go of all of those experiences and to just be with the moment that is manifesting itself right now, and being open to allowing every single moment to hold you in a space of sacredness. This is you, right? You hold yourself in your own space of sacredness through non-attachment of realities. So I'll give you an example of what I mean to be more clearer. Okay, I went through this experience on the full moon. As the full moon was emerging for myself, deep emotions arose for me. Now, generally when this happens, I tend to look at experiences that allows me to feel that I'm able to calm or soothe the emotional reality for me. So what I did was I then acted upon this idea of that soothing process. What it does is it creates a boundary and limitation around other experiences that can recreate, or for you to develop within yourself the ability to look after your own emotional reality without needing an externalized experience to validate or to give you that safety. So it's like, I will only be safe when that happens. I will only be okay if this happens. I will only be okay if that person does that. Or let's say, for instance, and this is a very deep subject here, and I'm bringing it up for a reason. It's sensitive, I get that. But we look at two presidential candidates, both of them representing different aspects of reality. Our emotional welfare was placed in either one of them or in another. What happened to us was that when this experience in America, at least, and this is for my American friends, and for anybody that's actually deeply invested into this experience, to be honest, but predominantly for you guys, because you're right there. Your emotional reality was invested in one of the candidates winning. And depending on which side you were, if you voted even for those two sides, there was an experience that happened to you once the results came in that was either celebrating or a complete and utter shock. The point here is that you were affected by an external attachment towards things that no longer can now be supported, and your security was linked with that experience. Now, that's an example where it can be very real for you, but you can look at other things around you as well and understand that these emotional attachments that we have to externalize things that we have developed from our baby times of coming into this world, we are searching for this deep inner return back to the love. And that what we do is that as we grow, we don't get that taught to us. So we develop unconsciously these natural security attachments. And when they get removed, Scorpio, the abandonment betrayal happens. And so there's mass amounts of madness, control, loss, anger, frustration. And it's all rooted in this awareness, this behavior, this emotional experience of placement of these these empowerments existentially. And this is the key here. This is the key that I really, really want to bring home as I finalize this full moon experience today. As we go forward, as we experience ourselves going forward, and I did mention this earlier, as we experience ourselves going forward, we will be consistently reminded that every form of emotional attachment that is placed outside of yourself, you will at some point be reminded, brought back to the center when that gets removed. This is the water trine that evolutionary astrology talks about. This is the path to deepening your awakening experience. It is the realization of your externalized attachment that gets taken away, that deepens your awareness of the experience. And then as you begin to have a consecutive amount of these experiences and awaken yourself, you realize that what you are searching for is inside. And that transition from empowerment in the ego, from soul, or from externalized, the center of gravity in the ego, it's eventually coming back to the soul, and then the ego becomes this vehicle that allows you to process your emotional reality. And that's why I mentioned about the Saturn webinar / live stream, and why it's important to look at your Saturn, because that's where your emotional work gets taken place, your growth gets taken place. So we will become to understand that if we want true sovereignty, if we want what it means, and we want to understand sovereignty, we need to understand that it is not about placing emotional security outside of ourselves and having our emotional welfare experienced and influenced and threatened, and then us becoming victimized by it. Because remember, the immediate, like the emotional reality that exists within yourself, when it is projected into the outside world, and there is an attachment to that, when that attachment, its dynamics change, again, Pluto through Capricorn, squaring Jupiter and Libra, Uranus and Aries, when that external attachment changes, its dynamics change it threatens the security and foundation of your center of gravity within yourself. Then when that experience happens, you choose to respond to it. And your response that you have towards that experience then becomes the way that you interact with it. So again, if you're feeling like this is threatening your security and you're not seeing that it's your own emotional attachment to that thing that's being threatened, that's changing within you, then you will see that you can't become a victim to it anymore. Because you are removing the experience of something externalized, influencing your inner reality. So you can, it doesn't mean that you could, even if you still had your emotional security inside of yourself and that outer experience, it just means that your capacity for influence, for the need for control and the feeling of being victimized through the experience gets removed. And this is the higher consciousness here. This is the ascension of this chart. The ascension of this chart, the higher experience of this chart, is the realization of external attachments that are placed, and how disempowering they become when they get changed or removed. A deep Scorpio lesson that comes with this process. Okay, everyone. So I'm going to take like a 5-minute break, and then I'll be with the chat just answering a couple of questions for 15 minutes or so. So stay tuned, all right? So I'll see with you guys right now. set up the microphone over there. So I'm just gonna just chill out here for a couple of minutes. And if anybody has any questions for me that I can answer for you that's related to the full moon, any deeper clarity that I could offer regarding this full moon, maybe I could start off just by quickly creating a very like basic framework of what I'm trying to say here with this moon. It's simply that we are learning through this full moon experience and this current energy pattern to become aware of the emotional security that we place in external things and how that is influencing the way that we respond to our life based on those external security attachments. And that as we begin to shift into a new direction for ourselves, as we begin to open ourselves up more, as we begin to allow our energy to enhance our deeper exploration of who and what we are, we begin to understand that it is through allowing the experience to move through us, allowing us to be present with the process, allowing us to take a step back a bit and observe the process. Emotional attachment is something that we all, to a certain degree, are going to experience anyway. We are going to do it. I mean, we have to. That's one of the reasons why we're here, is to invest our emotions and energy into an externalized experience or into this reality for us to grow through. It's just knowing that the attachment in itself is returning us back to our center. And we're reaching a point here at a global level where that is happening. It's not just fundamentally happening on a individual level. And it's promoting this more deeper connection that has meaning to us. And it's allowing us to become more secure within ourselves as we open up more of our heart-centeredness. So yeah. Okay, so let's have a look. I've got the chat box up here. Let's do this here. So let's go. Okay. All right. So, okay. Let's have a look. So Amanda Ray talks about, would this signal the end or finalization of the Saturn return as well? Are you talking about your Saturn return in Scorpio, or because to me that's a good question that's not directly linked to the answer, but what I've noticed is that Saturn's cycle through Scorpio has finally come to an end through the sun moving in Scorpio, because all of the planets have moved through Scorpio after Saturn has left Scorpio. And that kind of like, yeah, yes, the answer is yes, Mandy, because I have Saturn in Scorpio as well. And I found that this sun transit through Scorpio has completely and utterly brought me the finalized awareness of what the Saturn return was for me. So yeah, and for everybody, absolutely. So let's have a look. Jordan says, this full moon was opposite my Pluto in Scorpio, and my Pluto is transiting over my Neptune at this time. What does that mean? Well, because I don't have your chart in front of me, what I can say to you is that, you know, because you are a Pluto and Scorpio generation soul, your deepest lesson is to understand self-reliance. You are a generation of souls that have come to understand what does it mean to invest your emotional security in yourself. So this full moon was deeply, deeply, deeply connected to your actual karmic story as a generation, and for you individually, about returning your power to yourself, returning back to taking your emotional security and placing it inside of yourself. Now, most of you that are born with this generation, with Saturn, with Uranus and Neptune and Capricorn, will come into this lifetime with a loss of the father, or the absence of emotional nurturance. Not all of you, but most of you. And so you're learning through the current trend, the current transits right now, on a collective level. The collective's learning this lesson, but you guys are learning that in an individual lesson as well, to say, look, just because my past has brought this kind of like wounding to me, I still have the capacity to take charge of that, and to own that, and to evolve myself into the fullest potential of who I am. And that begins with honoring your journey. And that begins with taking all your emotional security and saying, I'm in charge of my empowerment. That's the headline for this video. I'm in charge of my empowerment. And we all get this. Okay. Okay, so Richard, you were talking about, or Tanya, let me see there. Question, how does Taurus moon and other earth elements such as Cap, Virgo correlate? Can you be more specific on that question, or just help me out a little bit more with that question? How does the Taurus moon and other earth elements such as Capricorn and Virgo correlate in relation to, yeah, just help me out with that question. So Richard, I got a lot out of this. Okay, great. Don't have any questions. That's great. You ask, I mean, everybody can read in the chat, right? So you can read in the chat where I'm at this point in time. So a lot of what I'm talking about here in terms of this is again to you, Richard, in response to your question. There are two levels here that I always see. One is, this is just because the energy is not manifesting in your life, like directly, or any person that has that directly, it doesn't mean that that experience can not be still anchored in. So this full moon was the lessons of emotional integration and self-reliance, the capacity to know that your needs and emotional resources are invested within yourself, and that empowerment comes from understanding that. Okay, you building the framework for your own life from your inside and not letting other people influence that, and taking your power back through that process. Okay. So any insights into the full moon conjunct natal Venus conjunct Chiron, 4th house in Taurus, opposite Scorpio, MC? This is from Regina Carl. You know, I would pay attention to the emotional reality that you've gone through over the last couple of days. To me, it feels that with Chiron and Venus conjunct each other in the 4th house, there is a deep emotional wounding regarding your sense of security, maybe towards the mother, maybe towards your home, maybe towards the security that you offer yourself and what keeps you in your ability to feel emotionally safe. And I would say that this is about developing a life where your essential needs on a physical and emotional level are very, very much established through you. So that would be like, this is where you come to learn about these lessons of being self-reliant on an emotional level, not asking other people to be, for you to be dependent on them, but to actually develop deep within inside of yourself the ability to say, okay, look, I have these responsibilities, I have these things I need to do, and I'm going to spend a great deal of my life emotionally investing in becoming self-reliant here, so that I don't have to ask for external, I can limit the amount of external dependencies. Okay. So Jasper is saying Taurus full moon was conjunct my moon on the ascendant in Taurus in opposition to my Neptune. What does that mean? Well, again, guys, this is a great example. You know, I am the astrologer here, and I do have the capacity to talk about these elements. But we do look to externalized authorities as a way of understanding ourselves. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to point this back to you again and say, how did you experience the last 4 days? What was your feelings? How did you feel within inside of yourself? How did you emotionally feel about your self-identity? Did anything change for you? Did you have a feeling about certain things? Did you respond to stuff? How are you paying attention to these experiences? And look at that stuff there and really, really get in touch with your own astrology chart. Now, when you have Neptune opposed the moon, this can be a deep conflict around your emotional self-reliance and your ability to feel safe in relationships. And you've probably had relationships end in a way that's been deeply scorpionic. You know, they've just left, or abandonment or betrayal, or you've lost. So this would be a lesson around how you can take charge of your own, again, Taurus, lessons of self-reliance and limiting the dependency that you have on other people, and allowing yourself to be more open and trusting in your heart around feelings of safety. Okay, those were the kind of thoughts that were coming through at this point in time. Okay, so Claire talks about, Dreamold, you asked a question. Okay, can you do me a favor and write it again for me, please? That would be great. I'll answer that for you, okay? And then I'm going to be ending off here in about a couple of minutes time, guys. Okay. So, right, North Node Taurus, 22 degrees. Sun's in Cancer in conjunct. Okay, so Claire's got North Node Taurus. Okay. Okay. North Node Taurus. Sorry, guys, I'm just trying to get in touch with this energy here. North Node in Taurus, 22 degrees. Sun's in Cancer in the 8th, conjunct the moon. Feels powerful healing. Okay. Any thoughts? Whenever you've got your North Node in Taurus, the entire lesson of self-reliance becomes the process of your life. Like, you have to consistently keep on making choices in your life that is deeply rooted in your self-reliance. You are the one here that's come to save yourself. Now, we all, on some level, have this lesson. But for you, this deep experience is amplified through your story, like your karmic dynamic. So you will naturally find yourself needing to deal with resources, understanding the power of resources, how to share them, how the distribution of resources works, and really, really understanding and gaining wisdom around who gets what and how information and resources are shared. Okay, so it's about a power play story that you're getting here. Okay, so Dreamold, and this is the last question I'm going to do for everybody. I wanted to ask, if related to the subject, how does the North Node in the 2nd house in Sag work? I also have Taurus in my 7th house. Okay, what does that mean according to the full moon? Okay. When you have the North Node in Taurus in the 2nd house Sag, your deepest story here is about making choices that are rooted in what are your values and essential needs, and then around what philosophy do you have. So what does it mean to answer your own philosophical questions? That would be something that is highly, highly part of that story. And the purpose here with the North Node in Taurus, just like Claire had with North Node in the 2nd house, is you're learning about self-reliance here. So you're deeply, deeply trying to get into this process of what is my philosophy and how do I understand what are my essential needs around my philosophy. So I believe in Buddhism. Well, why? Okay, what are the needs? What do you get out of it? What does it bring you? This is a story that you are coming to understand. The multitude of belief systems, and then looking at the underlying reality around why those belief systems are in play. That would be a North Node in the 2nd house Sag kind of experience, okay? Deeply understanding and gaining wisdom around the essential needs. And then you're also talking about, and so where else is it there? The chat's going a little bit fast there at the moment. Let's have a look. And then you said you also have Taurus in the 7th house. What does that mean according to the full moon? Again, so it comes back down to you. What happened for you during this full moon? What did you experience? How did you transit through this element, this energy? How has the last month been for you? How have you been watching your own story unfold? And that's something that's also part of the story. When your sovereignty comes online, it's your job to pay attention to, and everybody, including myself, pay attention to the process that you're going through as this full moon takes place, and watch how the awareness arises in front of you. So these new and full moon reports are just about attaching mental construction to the more physical attributes that are happening to you in the moment. Okay? So it's about staying aware of your reality as you're going through these new and full moon experiences, and then allowing yourself to experience those repetitive themes as they come past. So what is coming up for you? What came up for you? Did you have a conversation with your mother that brought up emotions? Did you have relationship dynamics that created this need for relying on yourself. You know, that's the story here, okay? All right, everyone. Thanks so much for participating with me today. I really, really enjoyed this experience. I will be bringing everybody a new live stream at some point in the future regarding Saturn. I really excited about that. Don't forget to hit this like and subscribe button and share this material. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks, guys, for being here. I truly appreciate it. And from the bottom of my heart, and from Jen's heart as well, have a fantastic evening, and see you soon. Bye.